What would you do if you walked into a room full of people, mourning, weeping, praying, and realized they were crying for you? But you were still breathing, still alive, still watching, still remembering. The silence in the room wasn't because you had arrived, it was because, in their minds, you had already left. They didn't see you. They didn't hear you. But they read your name aloud, with trembling lips and lowered heads, as if you were a memory they had finally laid to rest. And in that moment, a question carved itself into your chest like a blade. If the world believes I'm gone, do I even exist anymore? I was not in a coffin. I was not a ghost. I was not a faded photograph tucked into some dusty frame. I was here. I was alive. And yet, the air around me carried the weight of finality, like a funeral song whispered too soon. You see, this wasn't just about being forgotten.
No.
This was about being erased. Intentionally. Silently. Without a trace of warning. At first, I thought it was some sort of cruel mistake. A misunderstanding. A dream I hadn't yet shaken off. But the candles were real. The tears were real. The framed photo with my face in the center of it all was real. Someone had declared the end of my story, without asking if I was done writing it. And maybe the scariest part wasn't just that my name was spoken among the dead. It was that no one looked up. No one gasped in surprise. No one ran to embrace me with joy or confusion. They just kept reading, kept mourning, kept moving forward like I had never existed to begin with. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're screaming underwater, waving your arms in a room full of people, but no one sees you? Have you ever watched someone speak of you in the past tense, while you stood right there, heart still beating, soul still breaking? Because I have. And it all began on a forgotten Thursday. A day that wasn't supposed to mean anything. A quiet morning that turned into a moment of soul-altering realization. That's when I knew. Someone had made a choice. A decision to silence my name. To bury me in absence.
But why?
Why would someone go to such lengths to erase a living person? What did I know? What had I seen? And more importantly, who was gaining from my silence? I didn't have answers in that moment. Just the sound of my own name being read like a eulogy. My lungs filling with air I was no longer sure I deserved. My heart pounding with the weight of a story that wasn't finished. But I promise you this, if they thought I was gone, if they thought they could bury me with whispers and ink, they forgot one thing. The dead don't seek truth. But the forgotten? We remember everything. They called me by a name I hadn't heard in years. Not because I changed it, but because everyone else chose to stop using it. My name is Aaron, and I was once known, remembered, and loved. I had a mother who whispered my name in prayer, a best friend who yelled it across crowded rooms, and a lover who used to sing it like it was a song only she knew the lyrics to. But somewhere along the line, that name became an echo. Aaron became him. Became that guy. Became we don't talk about him anymore. And I wish I could say I didn't know why. But deep down, we always know when something shifts, don't we? Even when people pretend to smile, we feel it. Even when they say, I'm just busy, we know what's underneath. That's how it started. Quietly. Slowly. Like the first drop of rain before a storm that doesn't end. Let me take you back to before they read my name. Back when I was visible. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. The kind of place where your business wasn't just yours, it belonged to the community. Reputation was everything. Whispers traveled faster than cars. My mother, Miriam, was a pillar in the community. A teacher. A nurturer. She raised me alone after my father disappeared when I was just a baby. She used to say, Aaron, this world will try to make you small, but you were born to stand tall. Don't ever forget that. Funny, isn't it? How the same world that tried to make me small eventually erased me altogether. I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't wild or reckless. But I was curious. Too curious. That's what led me to him, Ezreal. Ezreal was my childhood best friend. The kind of friend you build forts with and swear blood oaths under the moon. He was daring where I was cautious. Bold where I was quiet. People loved him, feared him, followed him, and then envied him, including me. But I didn't know that envy could rot from the inside out. Ezreal and I both loved the same woman, Layla. The girl with the moonlight smile and hurricane eyes. She saw something in me, something deeper, quieter, more thoughtful. And for a time she chose me. That's when everything started changing. Ezreal pulled away. Rumors started to swirl. Secrets were whispered behind backs. I thought it was jealousy, maybe heartbreak, but it was more than that. One night, Layla showed up at my door with fear in her voice. "Aaron, I think someone's watching me." She wasn't the paranoid type. So I listened. I asked questions. I began to investigate. I noticed patterns. Black cars. Mysterious calls. Doors left open when we swore we locked them. I followed a thread I should have let go. And it led me to something that people in our town weren't supposed to know. A secret too big for one person to carry. So they made me disappear. Not with violence. Not with a crime. But with silence. They started small. Removing me from group chats. Not inviting me to events. Pretending not to see me in public. Then came the real hit. I lost my job. My records disappeared. Layla vanished without a word. And suddenly, I was a ghost walking through a town I used to call home. I tried asking questions. I tried confronting Ezreal. He looked me in the eyes and said one thing. "You were never really here, Aaron." That's when I knew. Someone was rewriting the story. And I was the character being edited out.
But why?
What secret had I stumbled upon that made them want to erase me? And why now, years later, were they holding a ceremony with my name on the front of a memorial card? I wasn't dead, but in their eyes, I had already been buried. By silence. By shame. By lies. And yet here I am. Still breathing. Still remembering. Because what they didn't account for was that the forgotten carry more power than the remembered. We watch. We listen. We return. You know what's strange? When they believe you're gone, when they think you vanished, they stop hiding. They speak freely. They leave trails. They get reckless. Because in their world, the dead don't look for answers. But I was never dead. Just discarded. And from the shadows, I watched everything. The ceremony was held in the same community hall where I had once read poetry aloud at age 16. The walls still had the same peeling paint. The same scent of old wood and varnish. But this time, the room was filled with solemn faces, people I had grown up with, holding candles, heads bowed as they mourned me. My name was printed in gold. Aaron Elijah, lost but never forgotten. Except they had forgotten me. Deliberately.
Collectively.
With a kind of silence that could suffocate a man's identity. I stood at the back of the hall, hooded, unmoving.
No one recognized me. They didn't want to recognize me.
Then, I saw him. Ezreal. In a sharp black suit, his head lowered in false grief. Beside him, Layla.
Pale.
Distant. Avoiding eye contact with everyone. Like her soul had been swallowed whole. It was the first time I'd seen her in years. My pulse thundered in my ears. She wasn't just gone. She was trapped. And Ezreal, he was the warden. That night, I followed her. Quietly. From a distance. She drove to the edge of town, toward the cliffs. The same cliffs we used to sit on together as teens, dreaming of running away. I watched her sit alone, legs crossed, staring into the night sky like she was asking it a question. And then, she whispered something I'll never forget. "I'm sorry, Aaron. I didn't know they'd go this far." That was confirmation. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. The conflict had never been just about love, or friendship, or betrayal. It was about power. Years ago, I uncovered documents, financial trails, coded communications, something linking the town's leaders to offshore accounts, illegal land deals, and blackmail operations. I didn't mean to. I was just following a curiosity. But once I saw what I saw, they couldn't unsee me. So they turned the town against me. They erased me. And now, years later, they were commemorating my death not out of mourning, but as a way to seal the lid on the coffin they built for me while I was still breathing. But something had shifted. Layla's presence at that cliffside, her whispered guilt, it cracked the glass they tried to trap me behind. So I began collecting pieces again, like I did before. Every whisper, every odd look, every name on the guest list of my own memorial. It turns out some were pretending. Some remembered too much. Some stayed silent out of fear. But others felt trapped, controlled, threatened. I visited an old ally, Mr. Kane, the former librarian. He had retired early, after a suspicious fire destroyed half the town archives. People called it an accident. But Kane never believed in accidents. He didn't gasp when he saw me alive. He didn't ask where I'd been. He simply said, "I always wondered if they'd finish the job. Guess they didn't." Kane had saved files, copies, hidden in a hollowed-out book. He handed them to me without a word. And as I opened those pages, the weight of it hit me.
Names.
Numbers.
Deals.
Threats. Confessions. A map of manipulation that started with the town's mayor, filtered through businessmen, school officials, even church leaders, and somehow, Ezreal was tied into all of it. He wasn't just my jealous ex-best friend. He was in it, up to his neck. The betrayal ran deeper than I thought. I needed to do something. Expose the truth.
But how?
They had already proven they could rewrite reality. So I needed allies. I started quietly reaching out to the ones who had disappeared from town. Former whistleblowers, retired teachers, ex-journalists, people who had been discredited, dismissed, forgotten. I wasn't the only one who had been erased. And suddenly, it became clear. This wasn't just about me. This was about every person whose truth had been buried under polished lies. But the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. One night, I returned to the place I was hiding, and the door was ajar. Inside, the lights were flickering. My files gone. But there was something left on the table. A note, written in shaky cursive. "Stop digging. Ghosts don't need justice." It wasn't signed, but I recognized the handwriting. Ezreal. He knew I was alive.
And he was warning me.
But what he didn't know is that I wasn't the same Aaron anymore. They had already killed my past. Now I was fighting for truth. And for everyone who had been forced into silence. The town thought they had held my funeral. But I was preparing for resurrection. And I wasn't coming alone. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed. After that note, after Ezreal's threat, something in me cracked open. Not out of fear, but out of fire. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about witnessing, telling the story they thought they had silenced. I moved like a shadow across the town I once called home, collecting truths, interviewing the unseen, gathering receipts that once only existed in whispered rumors and locked drawers. The people began to talk, slowly at first, but once the fear gave way to rage, their stories spilled out like floodwaters. And that's when we decided. The town needed to hear it. All of it. Out loud. And all at once. We chose the Founders' Festival. The one day the entire town gathers to honor tradition, the perfect setting for something unforgettable. Kane had an old projector system and vintage speakers hidden in his basement. We fixed it up, connected it to a secure laptop, and prepared the presentation. Every file, every hidden transaction, every audio confession, every falsified report. And at the heart of it all, a secret recording Layla had made 2 years ago. One where Ezreal confessed his involvement in framing me. Layla had kept it because, deep down, she never forgave herself. She handed it to me in person. "I didn't know what to do back then," she whispered. "But I know now." Laughter echoed in the streets. Lanterns were lit. Children danced with painted faces. The mayor stood tall on stage, preparing to give his annual speech. Behind the scenes, our team was in position. Kane cued the video. And then, the lights cut out.
Gasps.
Murmurs. Panic stirred. Seconds later, the giant screen lit up on the stage. It wasn't the mayor. It was me. Not the me they remembered, but the truthful me. Scarred, older, but alive. Before you celebrate, you should hear a ghost speak. People froze. Faces turned. Phones dropped. And then the files rolled in. Slide after slide. Clip after clip. They heard the mayor's backroom deals. They saw Ezreal's smug face as he admitted. Aaron? He was always too curious for his own good. The sound was crystal clear. The truth was undeniable. The entire square went silent. Then gasps, outcries, and finally rage. People shouted. Some tried to cut the feed, but it was mirrored on every device in town, synced to the emergency broadcast network. We had thought of everything. I stood behind the curtain, watching the dominoes fall. Ezreal arrived midway through the broadcast, storming the stage with security in tow. But it was too late. His lies had been made visible. His secrets unwrapped like gifts at a funeral. Layla appeared beside him, and for the first time in years, looked him dead in the eye and said, "You're not in control anymore." Over the next days, investigations opened. People were arrested, assets frozen, names published. Ezreal tried to disappear, but the law found him. The mayor was suspended, the town shaken awake. But what meant the most wasn't revenge. It was recognition. People looked at me with new eyes. Not as a ghost, but as a man who had lived, even when they denied him breath. I stood in front of the same community hall where they once held my memorial, this time speaking not as a victim, but as a witness. "I was alive," I said, voice firm. "Even when you forgot me. Even when you erased me. I was still here." There's something powerful about returning to the place where your name was read aloud like an epitaph, and speaking it yourself. I am Aaron Elijah, and I never left. The wind carried those words. Maybe not everyone clapped. Maybe not everyone was ready to face the mirror. But for the ones who were, it was like someone turned the light back on inside them. Cain passed away months later, peacefully, knowing justice had bloomed from the ashes. Layla? She started teaching again, this time, truth as her curriculum. As for me, I walk through the streets sometimes, unseen still, but not unloved. Children wave at me. Strangers nod. And sometimes someone will whisper, "I'm glad you came back." And I just smile, because they don't know. How many names have been read aloud in your absence? How many souls have been declared gone while still breathing, just because the world chose to stop seeing them? Sometimes, death doesn't come with a heartbeat stopping. It comes when people turn their backs, when they erase you from stories you helped build, when your laughter no longer echoes in rooms you once lit up, when they speak your name with pity, or worse, pretend they never knew it at all. But here's what I want you to know. Not by the heavens. Not by time. Not by the truth. And definitely not by the angels who've seen every silent cry, every closed door, every lie spoken about you. You are still alive. Even if they erased your photos. Even if they told stories that weren't yours. Even if they tried to bury your reputation, your heart, or your entire presence. Heaven still remembers you by name. And not only remembers, your name is still being whispered in divine halls. Your truth is still being carried in sacred winds. And your justice, it's on the way. So to anyone listening who's ever felt like a ghost in their own life, don't give up. Don't disappear. And above all, don't stop speaking your name. Because when they read your name thinking you were gone, let them tremble when they see you rise again.